do one today. Enjoyed a lot of football and took a bit of family time over the weekend. So I thought, I'll do just a quick roundup over the games that we saw over the weekend. The middle games in the Euros were, I'm gonna talk mainly about the three games that happened over the weekend that I really had a good opportunity to watch, and that was Hungary, France, Germany, Portugal, and Italy, Wales. Basically, the game of those three, the main game was definitely the Germany, Portugal. So what I'm going to talk about basically is what I observed in those games, and try to make some sense of some of it, because I'm trying to share some education, my own knowledge, and then in the middle game, the Germany Portugal game, I'm going to actually do a little video and talk over it through the ESPN highlights portion. So ESPN has some highlights, and I would like to just use the videos so there's some clips from this video as a way to illustrate some of the things that I thought gave Germany some territorial advantage, as well as the tactical mastery of Jogi Löw for the day. Okay, I'm not saying he's been great for most of the time since 2014, especially like in the last 3 to 4 years. He and the German national team have been suffering a slow decline in that time. And so, anyway, let's get started. So the France game was disappointing. I really was hoping to see France do a little bit more in terms of just how adventurous they're going to be going forward. And I say disappointing not because of how the game ended up going. I think France still had a lot of the ball. They had about 70% of possession at halftime. They also had, a lot of entries into the final third, into the the defensive, the defensive third of the Hungarians. So in a game like that, I really find it disappointing that Didier Deschamps decided to play a midfield diamond, because a midfield diamond doesn't allow you to have, unless you have like super talented goal scoring midfielders, which very few teams do these days. A diamond can be very predictable in that you're going to be getting goals from basically your front two, and I know behind that front two of Benzema and Mbappe, you had Griezmann, who is a bit more of a goal scoring threat. But it also meant that France were playing very narrow, because they didn't have any proper wings. It works, a diamond midfield, if you have a left back that's really offensive, like the German guy who I'll be talking about later on, Gosen. And then if you have another, Dani Alves type right back, even Hector Bellerin, who is not great, but like Joao Cancelo is, again, like, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. If you have those kinds of wing backs running, then the midfield diamond works well. In the case of France, they had Pavard playing on the right. He's not that great. Digne on the left was okay, but like, again, it was just basically one of those situations where you crowded the places in the field where you didn't need that level of security against a far inferior Hungarian side. So they needed, in my view, to have utilized their wings. They had, he got injured when he came on as a sub. They had Dembele and they had Coman, who could have played as wings and maybe sacrificed one of the three midfielders, Rabiot, Pogba, and N'Golo Kante. If you wanted to rest one of Kante or Rabiot, would have been fine, I think. I think Kante is very important for France, don't get me wrong, but he did play a lot of minutes and had played in the Champions League. And he was not the problem in his performance. The only reason I'm saying that he should have sacrificed one of those three midfielders, you didn't need when you're playing with 70% of the ball, you don't need extra safety and defensive protection. Because the Hungarians, whilst passionate and they played with a lot of pride, and they really were in France's face, but they couldn't live with them really. They were pushed back so far that it just wasn't making sense to have that many players who are not goal threats. And so what that would have given France, like the chances they had in the beginning. I mean, they had chances, don't get me wrong, but I do think had they had another high XG player on the field, that might have even tipped the scales further in their advantage. You have to utilize every advantage in tournaments that you have. And now they're going into the last round of these fixtures without any real knowledge of whether they're going to finish top of the group or second or third, because now Germany has got the win. What am I saying? France is playing Portugal in their last game, and Portugal needs a win now. So anyway, it's France could still win the group. I'm not gonna overreact, but I do think Didier Deschamps is a little too cautious. And with that said, I do think he needs to either hear from somebody next to him telling him what he needs to do in terms of bravery, because I know when he was a player, he was more of a defensive kind of player himself, and I can kind of understand or maybe guess at least what I think he's thinking with the type of midfield he likes to play, because he was himself that kind of player. Like I know there was an old saying in football, whenever we watched the Dutch national team, people would be like, if you have 10 Clarence Seedorfs or 10 Edgar Davids, you play all of him and the goalkeeper, and you'll win the game. That was a joke, but I do think, with that said, you can't have too many Didier Deschamps, because when you're playing, especially against a low block like the Hungarians were playing, it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to penetrate with players who don't have the imagination and the ability to then carry out that imagination on the football field. So France drew 1-1. They got hit on the counter-attack, sucker punched like in the injury time of the first half. They didn't deserve to lose the game, but they could have probably done a lot better than the 1-1 out of this game and gone into the game against Portugal with a bit more security. So let's see what happens. I mean, this group is going to be very fascinating, because France now, has 4 points, and then Portugal and Germany have 3 each. And Germany is playing, the weakest team in the group, so I would imagine Germany will win that game. And then these two, maybe a draw between them two would be the best result for everybody, because then that would mean, France is on 5 points. Germany wins the group, though, even though they lost to France, if they win, because they would have 6 points. And then you would have Portugal, basically, winning, becoming number 3, because they would have 4 points if they drew with France. But a draw wouldn't be harmful. It would be boring to watch that game if they were both playing for a draw. So let's hope not. But the game that was really exciting was the Germany-Portugal game, which I'm going to do last. But let me just talk quickly about the Italians and the Welsh team. This game was a very good game, but it was played in a spirit of too many changes, and so there was always going to be some kinks and players who hadn't had a kick in the tournament. Italy basically changed almost the whole team. They had a whole new front three. The only players that survived from the first 2 games in the starting 11 was Donnarumma, the goalkeeper, the centre-back Bonucci, who only played half the game, and Jorginho. The rest of the team was changed. It was really impressive, though, still. The front three of Bernardeschi, Belotti, and Chiesa. Enrique Chiesa's son, Federico Chiesa, is a very good player, and made a good case to maybe push Roberto Mancini to put him in the first 11 for one of the upcoming games. We'll see how that one goes, because that first 11 has really done incredibly well for those first two games. So that would be a really hard push, but I don't think if any one of those guys up front gets injured and Chiesa goes in, I don't think there's a drop. It was also a very good opportunity for Marco Verratti to get a run because he'd been injured, and it's going to be very difficult for him, to not play a game and then get to play in a very important part of the tournament. So having him get a solid game under his belt against the Welsh team, which was played in, it was not too high intense because Wales were trying to not lose the game because they knew if they lost by by a goal or less, or a goal or two, sorry, then that they would be secure to get through to the next round, and they achieved just that. So they lost 1-0, but they were able to get enough from the game to achieve their main target, which is get to the next round. But the Italians are a machine, and they're going to be a problem. And I hope it's not one of those cases where a team has this perfect record and then, loses with a whimper at the knockout stage. But it's going to take, I hope I'm right in saying it's going to take quite a performance to beat this Italian team if they don't beat themselves, through a red card or something stupid, which can happen in the game of football. So it's going to be interesting to see, going forward, what Mancini can do with his team, because he has options all over the place. And I do think, Verratti and Chiesa give him really good options from the bench or to step in for somebody. The centre back pairing from Juventus gives them very solid foundations too in terms of the back. So Italy has been really, really awesome in defending as a team, not just relying on the back four to defend. And that's been really marvelous to see that as they have become a very progressive and front-footed team, they are not sacrificing what they've historically been known for, which is staunch defensive solidity, and they just munch teams. They gobble you now, even with the front three, the middle three, and the back four. They press much higher, even though they're playing with those two old center backs. So I'm very, very impressed with what I've seen from them so far, even when they made those 8 changes in this last game. The last game I'm going to talk about is the Germany-Portugal game. So I'm going to run this clip, courtesy of ESPN. I'm not trying to, take any credit for these pictures, but I'm just using them to just basically illustrate what I observed, which was how the wingback play of Germany was actually very interesting. Let me just share a few of those thoughts before I start running it, because otherwise it's going to go too quickly. The way Gosen on the left was basically becoming a fourth forward. I talked in one of my earlier videos about how, most teams now like to have in the offensive phase of play, 5 tiers up front, like different channels. One guy on the left lane, one guy on the right line, and then 3 guys in between them, kind of like doing this V shape. If you're looking at the field from the defense to the attack, it's like a cone. And how they made that cone was very interesting, because they play in a 3-4-3, and the 3 at the back don't really have a lot of pace for Germany. So you will see the counter-attacking from Portugal causes them some problems, especially when Ronaldo and this kid from Wolves, Diogo Jota, and Bernardo Silva, when they stretch them and make quick, incisive passes, really, really good. But Portugal were disappointing on the ball. So you will notice that the Gosen kid, he was involved in almost all the goals, and he was my man of the match. I didn't realize how good he was before this game. I know he plays for Atalanta, and they've been playing really impressive football the last 2.5 seasons up in Serie A in Italy. And then on the right wing back, they played this kid from Germany, German champions, Bayern Munich, Joshua Kimmich. Joshua Kimmich was playing as a right wing back, but what ended up happening was, because they had Gundogan and Toni Kroos as a midfield 2 in the 4 across the middle in the 3-4-3, Kimmich would push forward, but he didn't go as far forward as Gosen on the left. In fact, it looked as if Germany were playing a 3-3-4 for most of the game, because Kimmich is, my God, what a dream footballer for a coach. You know, he's one of the best central midfielders in the world if he plays in that position for any team, between Germany or his club team. And he played him at right back, like traditional right back. He's still incredible and still probably one of the top 5 right backs in Europe, if not the world. So to have a kid like him, I know a lot of people didn't appreciate him playing on the right wing back, but he was tucking in and kind of playing a little bit more creative and playing behind what's his name, the old guy from Germany, Thomas Muller. So he was playing behind Thomas Muller, and Gnabry was playing as a so like you have like this Bayern Munich club football trident there, right? You have Kimmich, Thomas Muller, Serge Gnabry, and then you had Kai Havertz playing out that way, who's also a very good player at reading spaces and so forth.